Hello, and welcome to NASA Rockets to Racecars at-track aerodynamic activities. My name is Marile Colon Robles, and I'm one of the education specialists from NASA Langley Research Center and part of the Rockets to Racecars team. What I'm going to walk to you through today is the basics of the science of aerospace and the correlations to racing. I'm going to show you some activities that we do at track and talk about what's happening in these activities. We're going to do another video on how to do these activities at the track. So I'm connecting to you from NASA Langley Research Center, which is in Hampton, Virginia. We're the mothership of all the NASA centers, and it's really special to be connecting from NASA Langley because we started in 1917, right after the Wright brothers took flight. So aerodynamics is in our blood, if you will. So a lot of the things that we've worked here and that we'll see in the activities relate to aerodynamics and to Bernoulli. So Bernoulli's principle states, let me show you guys a slide here. Bernoulli's principle states that an increase in speed of a fluid occurs at the same time as you have a decrease in pressure. This is very important, and it's a characteristic used in flight. So an increase in speed of a fluid is accompanied by a decrease in pressure. They go hand in hand. And of course, this is important because air is a fluid, just like water is. So this is very characteristic of all types of fluids. And for those of you that do earth science or have any correlations or experiences with rivers, we see this in rivers and river bends. Okay, when the river bend starts, when you bend a fluid, that fluid will go faster, decreasing the pressure. Other examples that you might see is when you have a hose, just a simple hose, and you don't have these fancy schmancy things at the end of the hose. What do you usually do to make it go fast and a farther distance? Is you use your thumb, right? I remember loving to do this when I was a little one. And you use your thumb. Now, if you think of it, you're squeezing the fluid, which will make it go faster, but you're also making it go around a curved surface. And if you do happen to have one of these things at the end that you put at the end of the hose, the sprayers, they do have something that looks kind of like a ping pong ball inside, which is forcing that fluid to go around a curved surface and squeezing. Okay, so we just talked about two characteristics of fluids. If you squeeze the fluid, it'll go faster. If you make it go around a curved surface, it'll go faster. Now, these things are applied in flight, especially going around a curved surface, when we talk about the airfoil shape. Now, the airfoil shape is what we observe at the tips of the wings. And when you have the wing, it'll look flat on the bottom and curved on the top. And that's what we call the airfoil shape. And let me draw it out for you guys here. Let me go here to my pad. When we talk about the airfoil, again, we talk about flat on the bottom and curved on the top. Okay? And this is what we call an airfoil. And as the air approaches the airfoil, it has two ways that it can go. It can either be forced over the top, or around a curved surface, or go straight. Now, we talked about that when you force a fluid around a curve, just like it's happening here, it'll go faster. So we have here fast moving air relative to below, which is slow moving air. If we revisit what Bernoulli says that when you have faster moving air or water, a fluid, when it's moving fast, it's accompanied by low pressure. Relatively, in the bottom, we have slow-moving air, which would lead to high pressure. Okay? So this is the principles of the airfoil, is using shapes and knowing how the fluid behaves to result in a difference in pressure. Now, when we look at nature and how nature behaves, everything goes from high to low pressure. And if you think about it, we see this a lot in many different ways in nature. I am an atmospheric scientist, or used to be an atmospheric scientist, so I always think of weather and storms and patterns. And maybe because I grew up in the Caribbean, but I always think of hurricanes. When you hear about hurricanes, a hurricane approaching, you'll always hear pressure and wind speed information. And if you notice, the stronger the hurricane or the faster the winds will be accompanied by a decrease in pressure. When you hear that the pressure center decrease, it'll be a stronger hurricane or faster winds. Now, when everything goes from high to low, right, we think of other storms like low pressure centers over big expanses. The air from all around that low pressure center or storm comes towards it. Everything goes from high to low. And let me show you guys other examples as well. When we think about osmosis, osmosis is the movement of water from where there's a lot of water molecules to where there's very few water molecules. Okay, so everything goes from high to low. So if we go back to our drawing, and we know that everything in nature goes from where there's a lot of it to where there's little of it. We know then that the net force, or the result, will be from high to low. It'll be an upward motion. And that's what we call lift. Okay, so lift is achieved by having that difference in pressure. And with the airfoil shape, which is at the tip of the wings of airplanes, we achieve that by forcing a fluid around a curved surface to make it go faster. When we look at cars and NASCAR cars or race cars, we see this in many different ways, in different patterns, how they use or develop that difference in pressure. So let's come over here. Let me show you one of the ways that they use the difference in pressure to lead to lift. In the case of NASCAR, when they use that difference in pressure, it's not called lift because it's pointing downwards. So it's called downforce. One of the examples that they use is the splitter. And this is this part here that you can barely put your hand under it. And the splitter, what it does, it splits the air in two. So the air either goes up to the car and goes over the car, or it can go under the car and go straight. So let's consider what's happening in the splitter. Okay. Now I said that it's lift, but we don't call it lift because it's pointing downwards. So let me go back to that. So if I were to turn the airfoil shape now around, so we have that the airfoil shape is like that. But if I turn it upside down now, and I have the curve, let's assume that now the air is coming this way. Now I have a curved surface on the bottom and the straight on the top. Curved surface, whenever you force a fluid around a curve, it'll go faster relative to on the top, which is going slow. Faster moving air leads to low pressure. Slower moving air leads to high pressure. Now everything goes from high to low, so now instead of pointing up, now the net force is pointing down. Now this is not gravity, right? When we think about the four forces of flight, it's up here. We have up, which is lift. We have down, which is gravity. If we're moving forward, if this is a movement forward, and the airplane wants to move this way, this is thrust. The energy put into moving in the direction that I want to go. And then opposite of thrust, I always have drag. Now this force, with this drawing, it's pointing down, but it's not gravity. We call it down force. Okay, and down force is what's responsible to keep those race cars on the racing surface, on the track. So if I now have the car, the front of the car, and I have that splitter, which makes it go really close to the ground, okay, that air is being squeezed under the car, and the rest is going over. So whenever you squeeze air or squeeze a fluid, it'll go faster. So right now I have fast moving air under the car compared to slower moving air over the top. Remember in Bernoulli, faster moving air leads to low pressure, slower moving air leads to high pressure, and everything goes from high to low. So I have downforce. And downforce on the front of the car is very important to keep the car on the track and stable, for the driver to have better handle on the car. Now a neat activity that you can do to show this is using an index card. If you grab an index card, use the red line to create a fold. I'm going to use the red line and follow along that line and create a fold. And kind of estimate the same distance on the other side. I can make a table. Okay? And it's pretty close to the ground because if you notice, I didn't fold very much. And if you take a straw now, and with the straw, I'm going to aim and blow air under the card. What's going to happen to my index card? And let me show you a video I did demonstrating this. So if you notice, when I blew air under the card didn't fly off like you would expect, but actually bent down. This is an example of that splitter that we drew. You're squeezing air under what would be squeezing air under the car. In this case, I'm accelerating or blowing really fast air under the car. On the top is slower moving air. So faster moving air, lower pressure, slower moving air, higher pressure, and everything goes from high to low. So then the net force makes a bending motion on the car. It's just like how the splitter works on the car. Now, when we also talked about downforce, we drew a spoiler and just flipped it upside down. If you think of what part of a car acts that way, well, it's the spoiler in the back. And spoilers used to be referred to as wings, just like airplane wings, right? But now they call it spoilers. And spoilers, the name comes from spoiling lift. That's what it does. It spoils lift. So then let me show you here a picture of a spoiler and what is happening in the spoiler itself. So when you have the spoiler, again, the curved surface is on the bottom, which will lead to faster moving wind speeds. That faster moving wind speeds will lead to lower pressure compared to over the top, which will have slower moving speeds and higher pressure. And remember, everything goes from high to low. Perfect. So this is very interesting principles that we see in airplanes and also in cars. Now, I was alluding to that before, the race cars had wings, but now they have spoilers. And really what they're looking at is creating that difference in high and low pressure. Once you have the difference in high and low pressure, then you get the downforce necessary to keep that car on the track surface. Now there's a number of different activities you can do relating to using ping pong balls and blowing in between the ping pong balls and seeing what happens. You can do index card activities. You can try and recreate a rotor motor. And all of these activities create a difference in pressure to lead to downforce or lift. So in the next video, I'm going to go over some of these activities and how we do them at the track. Again, as long as you create a difference in pressure, you'll either have lift or downforce. Thank you so much for joining.